This sketch is going to be a little bit simpler than a lot of those that we've undertaken before. Work boots, pair of boots. And we're going to start out with some rough construction lines and go from there. Not going to worry too much about proportions and dimensions, etc., etc. Just a line sketch that we'll fill in here. If anything, it's a little exercise in foreshortening with the toe of the right boot pointed at you and the left boot laying down and extending away from the viewer. Boots are a pretty popular topic with artists. A lot of, several Van Gogh's works were dedicated to work boots. Since this is a Western museum, these particular work boots are going to be cowboy boots. So the question with cowboy boots is always, do you put the pants inside the boot or do you put the pants outside the boot? I always assumed that you were stuffing your pants inside the boots if you had a fancy pair that you wanted to show off, but otherwise outside made a little more sense. I had some experience with coming to that conclusion years ago when I had a pony at the end of a lunge line grazing, and I assumed that it was a horse I knew about, but he showed me a thing or two new. At some point he bolted. I have no idea why, but before I had a chance to let go and let him have his head, he pulled me down and dragged me through a pile of manure, which thereupon filled up both of my boots, kind of packed it in. The only positive is that the boots tended to act like a sea anchor and slow him down. I was finally able just to secure the pony and spent the next 20-25 minutes carefully shaking the shoes out so that I could extricate my feet. But after that, I concluded that it was pants outside the boots was the way to go. The other reason is typically if you're out riding, you're wearing Levi's, and Levi's aren't necessarily the best thing to be wearing for horseback work. The seams are such and the hem at the bottom is such that it creates kind of fabric knots that will ride on your ankle just at the right spot and irritate you. So keeping the pants outside of the boots provides a little bit of relief from that. And the other thing that the old-timers knew in riding is if you're wearing long johns, you've got that extra layer that you can put between you and the horse, and it keeps the pants from abrading your flesh. Down in Arizona, the old-timers tended to rely on pantyhose, though I don't think they'll really own up to that. Anyhow, back to this exercise. Just a line drawing at this point, trying to get some of the detail out. And needless to say, these are not a pair of fancy boots, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to replicate a stitching pattern in them or anything like that. I'm also not spending any time trying to define the background on these either. So they're going to float in the air a little bit, but we'll do some shading and shadowing and anchor them. Trick, of course, is once again, how do you represent a rounded or three-dimensional figure on a piece of paper? And with a line drawing, you can kind of do that by just pulling a line around and showing a bit of contour, and then perhaps adding some shading on either side, creating some highlights. And this is kind of a staged thing anyhow, because typically you wouldn't try to pull your boots off with the spurs still attached. But for a little bit of artistic license here, I've left them on. Makes it a little more interesting subject. You'll notice also that I'm not showing any buckles on those spur straps. They would be on the outside. And I've seen folks wear their spurs and they'll have the buckles on the inside, but I've always thought that when you're doing that, you're just inviting a disaster, because at some point those buckles are going to lock as you're walking somewhere, and they'll catch on each other and put you on your face. But I've heard other folks describe that that isn't an issue. I'd just as soon not find out. As far as shadowing, just anchors these characters, and a little darker right close to the boots, as the shadow would be darkest there, and then fading out in the background. But once again, this is meant to be just a fun exercise, so I'm just playing with a pencil at this point. In terms of tools, I started out with an HB and then went to a 4B, and as you see now, I'm just using a graphite stick that's probably 2B in terms of softness. A little bit of blending there. And I'm just throwing graphite around. For our next exercise, it'll probably run a little longer. I'm thinking to do an architectural study, which is a fancy way of saying an old barn. Mostly dinking around at this point, just finessing it. And at some point I'll get my mitts out of the way. Yep, just a few touches at this point, and that's pretty much it. And there you have it.